Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, my true crimers. Welcome to All True Crime with Jody ASMR. Tonight, I'm just gonna go ahead and put a warning out there. Very, very graphic case. The case of Gabriel Fernandez, which was actually recommended to me by one of my subscribers, so thank you. I do know this case very well, and it is unbelievably horrific and sad. So as with all true crime, but especially this one, I don't even know how to explain what you're going to hear if you have not heard this case tonight. Nobody under the age of 14, and even then, viewer discretion, please be advised. This is a story of a child who was so sweet and so kind and loved his mother so much. It was a travesty that she just seemed not to ever love this boy. It brings me to tears. When I watched the special on Netflix, I was just bawling, and this little boy deserves more than just an ASMR artist to put out his story. He deserves the entire world to know his story. I mean, I can't imagine not loving my child, even on her bad days, or hitting my child. But this woman and her husband, who is his stepfather, abused and tortured this child for months because they just didn't love him. He had been passed around from family member to family member over the years. And what happened there was she was on drugs and was not capable of keeping him. She had other children that she did not abuse or torture. But for some reason, I don't know what would possess a human being to treat anybody, even their worst enemy, the way she treated this little boy, with a smile that could crush the most hardened heart, and eyes that would just melt you into pieces. This little boy was 8 years old when he was brutally tortured to death. But I want to go over who he was and what he was like. He loved school. He loved his mother. He loved obeying. He was a good kid. And he loved his uncle who he had lived with, but apparently his mother just did not want him living with this man because she thought he was gay, or he was gay. But I mean, who cares? He loved him. He cared about him. Really, the stepfather was the catalyst in getting him away from a gay man because he was so homophobic. But then he brings this child into his home, and what starts out with just beatings and hittings and yellings, then it turns into something so horrific, so demonic. A child at 8 years old writes a letter to his mother. I will love you. I will die for you. And another one on Mother's Day, where I'm trying not to cry. This is really upsetting. His teacher takes 3 pictures of him, and he has the letters M-O-M taken 3 different pictures and then puts them into one picture to spell Mom. This was on Mother's Day. This little boy would not live through the weekend, would never give his mother that Mother's Day card. And looking at that card, those 3 pictures, you can see where he had skin peeling off his face, where he had been poured boiling water, hot water over him, where he was malnourished, had cigarette burns on him, was beaten to the point of his lips were swollen so far away from his mouth. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked so thin and just so like he was, anybody just love me, please. I'm a good kid. And that's what he says. He goes, Mommy, I'm a good kid and I love you. This story breaks my heart into pieces. I don't know why, and it pisses me off that Child Protective Services, I truly believe, and in the Netflix special, the thing was he lived in a bad area, and his stepfather was a very aggressive man that people were afraid of. So nobody wanted to go over there really and check on this boy. They had to know something was wrong. When he was taken away from his grandmother, he was given to his uncle, and then when apparently Gabriel's mother had gotten off drugs was 2 put together, so maybe 5 foot long, 2 or 3 foot wide. He was not fed, he was chained like a dog. And he had to sit there day and night in his own feces, his own urine, his own pain, and watch his mother love and care for his siblings and his stepfather. If he snuck out to get food or water, he was beaten. He's not allowed to use the restroom. He was forced to wear a diaper that was never changed. I don't even understand this level of abuse. These social workers should have been, by bar, held criminally liable. Originally, all 4 social workers were charged with 1 felony count of child abuse and 1 felony count of falsifying public records after the boy's death. What this means is that they would go to the home, but they wouldn't walk in, or they would be late for something, and they were just afraid to go. That's what I think. So they would just say they went, and they say the boy was fine. He was being well taken care of. Prosecutors alleged they mishandled evidence of the abuse the boy faced at the hands of his mother and her boyfriend and missed repeated red flags. Now, the boy only ended up being with his mother again. He was taken away when he was very young. Only 8 months before they managed to murder him. The Los Angeles Department of Children and Family Services sent a statement on Thursday responding to the dismissal of charges, which said, "We respect the court's decision. Over the years, the Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services has taken significant steps to mitigate risk and improve our capacity countrywide," the statement said. The problem with the Los Angeles Department of Family and Child Services is that there are so many cases, and they're just, half of the city could probably become a social worker, and the cases just would not be is because there's a lot of very dangerous parts of the city that these people do not want to risk their lives to go check on these children. That is so sad to me. Bring 3 police officers, bring a couple snipers with you. I don't care. Protect these kids, because this Gabriel was not the first child. It just was so sad and sickening, because at 8 years old, how much he loved his mother and just wanted to be loved and was in a safe house with this uncle. And because he was gay, his stepfather said he was being molested and all this stuff. It was just to get him into a home to where he could shove him into a 4 or 5 foot cabinet in a tiny house. Leave him in there for days on end. Sometimes he'd be in there without food or water for 3 or 4 days. Months of beatings, starvation, and torture, including being forced to eat cat feces and sleep prison without parole. But let's go back to the days. So I just wanted to get that's what their sentences were into your mind, and then I'm going to read something a little later. But the days leading up to his horrific demise, this child is writing letters to his mother. I will love you till I die. I would die for you. If you will love me, I will die. I would give my life for you. He would leave these notes in his desk at school. His teachers had noticed that he would come to school with just blisters and peeling skin from being, they didn't know it, I guess, at the time. I guess he had some excuse because he didn't want to be taken away from his mother again because he loved her so much. But his skin was peeling away from his head, from where either he'd be in his own urine, sleeping on that hard wooden cabinet. Boiling water is poured on him, being beaten, slapped, tied up, forced to eat cat feces. Just starved, not given water. In 8 months, these two managed to take a perfectly healthy child and destroy him, which isn't that long of a time. His teachers were probably thinking, well, something might be going on, but, DCFS was called and it's been handled. 4 DCFS agents are on this. So everything must be okay. The excuses that he was giving them must be true. So his mother indicated in her petition that she was not her son's actual killer and did not act with the intention to kill or assist in his killing. This is not the case. She was actually the instructor. She instructed her boyfriend or whatever to abuse him, and she would participate in the abuse. I don't believe that for a second. She also checked a box stating she was not a major participant in the crime. Well, she didn't call 911. She let him go to school with burn marks, blisters, sleep handcuffed in a cabinet, starved, forced to eat feces. She watched every minute of this. I just can't believe it. She says she's not a major participant in the crime or did not act with restless disregard to human life during the course of the crime. I don't even know how she could have said that. Los Angeles County Superior Court Judge George Lomelli, who presided over the murder trial, said at a hearing that he reviewed the petition and concluded that she was not entitled to resentencing relief. It has been established by her own admission during her guilty plea that the murder was intentional and involved the infliction of torture over a period of several months. Judge Lomelli said, adding that the record supports the theory that Fernandez was a major participant in the murder of a child victim. So, June 7, 2018. June 7, citing the medical examiner's report. So clearly, Pearl, his mother, was involved in that child abuse, starving Gabriel, keeping him in the box for 8 months. I mean, he didn't even have his own bed. Oh my God. I mean, not taking him for medical aid, pepper spraying him in the face. That's what the blisters got worse from. Hitting him with a baseball bat. So many things were brought out in the trial, Tommy said. Evidence-wise, Pearl Fernandez tortured and killed Gabriel. Both her and her boyfriend did that. They were equally culpable for that. However, he gets the death penalty and she doesn't. And she's the mother. Sherry, a family friend, helped organize a rally, attracted dozens outside the courtroom. She endured an emotional roller coaster. That's what I wanted to know. Where? Or, didn't the grandparents see that, that this child was where he was living? That he was in a little drawer, handcuffed. Did they not see the blood on the walls? And there was just how skinny he had gotten. Did they not realize? But the problem is that if Child Protective Services are not forcing anybody to remove a child, then the child has to stay where that's kidnapping. You can't kidnap a child. So you can, this whole case was just so unbelievable that all this time, how good these DCFS workers, I know they had a lot of cases, but they had to have had a feeling. Somebody had to have known a neighbor, a friend, had to have seen where Gabriel slept. His aunt came over and was very concerned. His grandparents came over and were concerned. However, she had other children that were fine. So they kind of covered up for her. We'll never really know exactly what happened. We just know it was horrific for little Gabriel. And all he wanted was his mother to love him. When this woman, Sherry, entered the courtroom, she had a sick feeling. Walking out of there with finally some justice for Gabriel was the best feeling that we have had in such a long time, she said. Criminal defense attorney Corin, who is not involved in the case, said that his law firm fields calls almost daily concerning resentencing, but that most seeking relief don't qualify for it under state law. I think people in the community read news stories about laws changing and defendants having their sentences reduced. So they naturally believe their family members are eligible to be released from prison. In reality, very few people are actually entitled to relief under the new California statutes. According to Corin, most murder convictions, which represent a relatively small number of cases in Los Angeles, criminal courts are secured with theories for criminal culpability that are not covered by the statute for release. He added that Fernandez's case did not was a person, that he was a human being, that he loved, that he cried, that he hurt this whole time, that there were people willing to take him and love him the way he deserved to be loved. He was constantly let down by the system when he most needed help. Based on in-depth reporting by LA Times journalist Garrett Theroff, the trials of Gabriel Fernandez chronicles how over 8 months Gabriel was subjected to horrific torture, regular beatings, being shot in the face with a BB gun, forced to eat cat litter and feces, locked in a cupboard for hours and pepper sprayed, and of course, handcuffed. Hot boiling water was poured over him the day that he died. He had tried to get out, get something to eat. Well, we're gonna find out exactly. The cruel nightmare ultimately ended when his mother and father, his mother and boyfriend ultimately beat him to death. But even worse, the Department of Child and Family Services and law enforcement were called to the scene multiple times before Gabriel's death, and no action was taken. Listen to this. And at one point, social workers even ordered Gabriel to stop lying, allowing his abusers to continue the torture until the horrific end. Alright, so the 9 most shocking details of this, it is unbelievable to me that this actually happened. Incompetent law enforcement, as depicted during the series, sheriffs were called to the house by other family members days before the murder, but no action was taken. In fact, law enforcement, often there, multiple times, just took Pearl's word that his mother, that everything was fine, and never even asked to talk or see Gabriel. And when they did, according to family members, they threatened Gabriel and told him that if he kept lying about his bruises, that he'd be the one to go to jail. That's what the police told him. So, not only was this child a victim of horrific abuse, but these policemen, which kids look up to, are telling him he's a liar. That he's a liar. Can you imagine the guilt and the shame? I mean, oh my gosh, shame on you. If you were one of the police officers, my God, how can you live with yourself? That's all. And that's just my opinion. It's just so upsetting. I mean, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but how could you threaten this little 8-year-old boy and not take his side? You could see the blisters when he was at school, blisters where his skin had peeled off from the pepper spray and boiling water and just living in feces and urine. They consistently believed the parents investigators. I mean, so what? What does that have to do with anything? Investigators found all of Gabriel's clothing disposed of, except for 2 dresses he was made to wear. So, because they thought he was gay, or his stepfather did, or her boyfriend, they forced him to walk around in women's or little girls' clothes to humiliate him, laugh at him, make fun of him, wear dresses. Because of this, there were talks about charging the couple with a hate crime also, which they should have been. They both should have been put to death. However, prosecutors decided that was more of a motive and could get a bigger sentence charging the couple with child abuse, well, with murder. So, the evidence, as these police officers and investigators walked into this house, they started to understand how heinous this crime was, how misjudged this child had been, how absurdly ignored when he just wanted to be loved and was a good kid. There was so much blood that on the doors and in the apartment, splattered on the walls and everywhere, in the bathroom, in the sinks, on the cupboards, on the floors, in the corners, that the yellow little tabs they use to mark the blood spots, they ran out of yellow stickers, which they have thousands of them, so they had to switch to a different color. Inexplicably, there was blood in the sink. The abuse was substantial. They fed him cat litter with feces in it, a bandana and sock in his mouth, knocked out his teeth with a bat, shot him in the face with a BB gun, and pepper sprayed him for fun while he laid in the bathtub. He would show up for school with bruises all over his face, as well as fresh cigarette burns and shaved hair. Gabriel's brother testified that her boyfriend, the main, abuser, would hold him by the neck while his sister said that his stepfather, I'll call him, knocked the air out of Gabriel on several occasions. So he'd hold him by his throat and neck with his hands and just knock the air out of him for fun. This was just for fun because he was doing nothing wrong. He was just sitting there, probably terrified. During the trials, the jurors were told the autopsy took an unusual 2 days because the injuries were so substantive. The thymus gland was barely there. A normal boy's gland weighs about 100 grams, while Fernandez weighed about 10 grams. The coroner said this was due to stress atrophy, so he was constantly afraid due to the boy's abuse inflicted on the boy. So he's constantly being abused, constantly afraid, constantly in this little tiny, cupboard that he would peek out this little, slit in. And if he was caught, he would be beaten even more. He had written a suicide note and pleas for his mother's love, which we had discussed. He often wrote notes to his mother saying he would kill himself and that he just wants to be a good boy. Why doesn't she think he's a good boy? Because he tries so hard. Days before he was murdered, he wrote a card to his mom telling her all the things he loved about her. Oh my God. that social workers are let off, which unsurprisingly, prosecutors sought the death penalty for Gabriel's mother and her boyfriend. But they also brought charges against the 4 social workers. Something that had never happened before, accused of minimizing the significance of the physical, mental, and emotional injuries that Gabriel suffered, and of allowing a vulnerable boy to remain at home and continue to be abused. They were each charged with 1 felony count of child abuse and 1 felony count of falsifying public records. But in the end, while her boyfriend was sentenced to death, Fernandez received life without the possibility of parole. But here's what really burns me up. The social workers escaped punishment the last month. A 2-1 decision in California's Second Appeals Court threw out the case on the grounds that the prosecutors did not approve the social workers had the requisite duty to control the abusers, and further concluded they did not have care or custody of Gabriel. Prosecutors have asked the court for a re-hearing of the case against the social workers, and I agree. They were wrong. They should be prosecuted with something, charged with something, punished somehow. Earlier they were saying Gabriel's mother was claiming she had nothing to do with this. It was all her boyfriend. But obviously she saw this happening. But likely she was the one who instigated it. She stood there and said, yeah, go do it. Be that little, whatever. Her boyfriend may have been the one who delivered the physical blows, but the prosecutors believed it was under the instruction of his mother. The documentary explained that she never wanted Gabriel and actually left the child at the hospital. Oh my God, that is so sad to not be wanted. Can you imagine being a young child and all you want to do is be loved? That's it. I mean, at that age, I would just, Mommy, please love me, please. And she was like, I don't want this kid. And there's so many nice families who can adopt. I don't know why she just didn't adopt him out. That just pisses me off to no avail. So leaving him at the hospital when he was born, when family members took him in, family members were privy to the abuse. Pearl's sister often slept over to shield Gabriel and the 2 other kids from the abuse. According to family members, she was uneducated, started using drugs at an early age, which stopped brain development. This is his mother. She was diagnosed with depression, bipolar disorder, PTSD, suffered from eating disorders, and had abnormalities on her scans. She was also a victim of gang rape and rape by an uncle at an early age. I don't care. You do not treat your child like that. And then petition to get him back because he is living with his uncle and is happy, and your boyfriend just doesn't want him there because your uncle's gay. His uncle's gay. And here's the thing, the jury wasn't unanimous. During her boyfriend's trial, the jury wasn't unanimous. 11 found him guilty, while 1 man didn't believe he should be convicted of first-degree murder. His reason: if he had wanted to kill Gabriel, he would have done it a long time ago. But obviously he did want to, but he wanted to torture him. There's a lot of serial killers that will torture people and keep them alive for fun, like a cat keeps a lizard alive for hours and hours, and even days, just to watch it as a toy, but then in the end killing it. It was the same juror who voted boyfriend because he felt that they needed to hear her boyfriend out. Man, this sounds like an abuser himself. The judge angrily denounced Gabriel's mother during sentencing. At the sentencing hearing, Pearl Fernandez apologized, saying she wishes Gabriel was still alive and that she hopes her kids can forgive her someday. The judge, who had been on the bench for 20 years, said he never personally commented on a case he presided over, never before, but had to for this one. He said that the pain Gabriel Fernandez suffered was unimaginable, to the point where he would call it animalistic. But even animals know how to take care of their young. He wished that both perpetrators would suffer mental torture in prison about what they had done. So this judge just couldn't believe it. Never in 20 years had commented on a case, but felt that he had to tell this bitch something. And I'm sorry, I don't usually swear, but this just is so obscenely horrific. It makes my skin crawl. DCFS also failed in other similar cases. 5 years later, another boy died under similar circumstances, actually the same. 10-year-old Anthony Avalos was denied access to food and a bathroom and was abused in the same ways as Gabriel was. Calls were made by teachers and relatives, but DCFS never helped the boy, who had come out of his cages weeks prior to his death. A spokesperson for DCFS said that they did indeed provide services to the family from May 14th to December 2014. Their last referral was in 2016. However, they did not receive enough information but provided the family with further resources. And this all happened in Antelope Valley, where Gabriel Fernandez had died as well. When prosecutors went to the medical hub in Lancaster, California, part of the Antelope Valley, they found it had been closed due to insufficient funding. The documentary series says investigators believe that there have been more than 150 cases where children have been abused even after DCFS was brought to DCFS's attention. Most recently, a 4-year-old boy was being abused. A court order was placed to have him removed from his home. DCFS never followed through, and the boy died under suspicious circumstances. So, even though under court order he had been ordered to be removed from the home, DCFS said, "Sorry, we did not follow up, now he's dead, but we aren't at fault." DCFS declined to take part in the series in its entirety. I do remember that. It's just unbelievable. From the police threatening him that if he didn't stop lying about what his parents were doing, his teachers felt bad, but their cries went nobody cared what they had to say. Suicide note. An 8-year-old does not write a suicide note. I'm sorry. Begging, saying that he would give his life for his mother's love. That all he wanted was his mother to love him, and she had the nerve to say, "I hope her other kids could forgive her someday." That she didn't mean what she did. Did she love Gabriel? I sit here and I listen to this, I think 3 or 4 times. I would just listening to and looking at the pictures of the house where he was kept, the little tiny cabinet where he was handcuffed, fed cat feces, beaten, pepper sprayed. It is so sad. this is a graphic case, and I know that a lot of you have triggers, and this is horrifying for me. I don't like to do this, but I can see the benefit of it. If you know a child who is being abused, like really abused, and nobody is doing anything, step up, take some action. You know, the problem with DCFS is that they don't want to go into the scary neighborhoods. They want to harass the people that don't really have anything wrong. These kids are fine, they're taken care of. But it's the bad ones that they ignore because they're afraid of either their own life, because these people are abusers and they don't care about anybody's life. They are narcissists. They're, just creatures. I don't, I just, being starved, begging, if he snuck out, was just, held up by his neck, punched in his stomach. He was 8 years old, and he only lived with his mother for 7 or 8 months. That's it, before she killed him. She didn't have him all those years that he was alive. But why? Why would she demand to have him back if all she was going to do was torture and beat him to death? That is so sickening. And 4 social workers knew about this. The police knew about this. All this could be completely prevented. Just left him where he was. I hope that the women in prison treat her as she had treated him. And I don't usually wish anything negative on anybody. I believe in karma, but this woman was a evil human being without a soul. There were BB guns, so paramedics, I wanted to go back to this. After the 911 call, Gabriel's mother reported that her son was not breathing. Paramedics on arrival found Gabriel with broken ribs, BB pellets stuck in his body, and a cracked skull. It was increasingly clear to emergency responders that there had been severe abuse. Gabriel was declared brain dead upon being taken to the hospital. He died May 24th, 2013. Just the punches on his lips, the bruising, patches of hair missing, his scalp being blistered. The teachers noticed that all was not well with Gabriel, who would ask questions such as if it was normal to be hit with belt buckles. After school authorities reported the child's condition to LA County Department of Family Services. Stephanie Rodriguez is assigned to the case. His siblings, in addition, had been beaten on a few occasions, but not like Gabriel. He was forced not only to eat cat litter and feces, but rotten spinach, and when he vomited it up, he had to eat his own vomit to clean it up. Then he was tied and gagged inside a torture box where basically he lived. 8 months is all it took. He was punished because he liked to play with dolls. Footage of Gabriel while he lived with his uncle depicts a happy, healthy child. It was reported that his mother only took him in she wanted him. She needed the money. So for a month she collected welfare benefits, but then he would have been fine with his uncle or his grandparents or her sister that he previously lived with. He was a sweet child. He was a happy child before he went to live with this heinous woman, Pearl Fernandez, and her boyfriend, which I will not even give him the respect of a name. There was no reason that he had to go live with his mother, who already had other children, but she wanted the benefits, so she pulled him out of a happy, healthy home and proceeded to kill him. So that is the story of Gabriel Fernandez. His mother, his her boyfriend, for money, and I'm sure other sick reasons, decided that this little baby who never really ever felt the love of anybody like a mother, and all of us want to be loved most by our mom or dad. Luckily, he did feel some love up until he was 8 years old by his uncle, his grandparents, and his aunt. There are no words, there are no prayers that are kind enough to describe this little boy. And there are no convictions that could punish these two adults for what they did. Death is not enough. Life in prison is not enough. I don't believe they felt like they did anything really all that horrible. And the Netflix series, I remember they were saying something that he was talking back, or they were trying to put the blame on Gabriel. But just, if you get the chance, watch it. I will leave pictures. And I want you to think about how you would feel, because I think that's the only thing we could give him now, is that respect, and listen to his story no matter how painful it is, because the amount of pain and suffering this child had to endure is among the worst I've ever heard. In my 45 years on this earth, and I've heard some pretty bad stories. But so I hope that by telling this case, it will give somebody the courage to speak up. It will give a social worker the motivation to make sure that a child that instinctively or is being abused, they can tell, he or she could tell, will make a difference, will make that stop, will not just falsify records city, or town. Bring an officer with you. Laws need to be changed if that's the case. If it is too dangerous for these people to go in there by themselves, then by all means, for God's sakes, bring the police with you. Walk in the door. Do not take the parents' word for it, because you're afraid of them. And that, I do believe, is the whole reason why they did not even ask to see Gabriel. The teachers were calling, the grandparents were calling, the sister was calling, the brother was calling. Jeez, I mean, could any more people be calling? Friends were calling, neighbors were calling. But when they got there, they just accepted this woman. Like, oh, okay. We don't need to see Gabriel. Can we just see him? Can we just talk to him for a minute? Oh, no, he's tied up in handcuffs with a gag in his mouth after eating his own vomit after he threw up old moldy spinach and cat feces. But, to take our word for it. I mean, it just... So, if you're listening to this, just think of that little boy. And hopefully, if you have the power to make a change in somebody's life, that you do that. You make a child happy that deserves to be happy. All children do. I'm just this, but what breaks my heart the most, honestly, is the notes he wrote to his mom before. They had this break in May around Mother's Day, and what was in his desk were these 3 pictures of him holding these letters, and he forced a smile, and he wrote all the things he loved so much about his mother. And then she kills him before he even has a chance to come back to school the next week and pick it up and give it to her. That gift from Gabriel should be part of her sentence. It has to be blown up and pasted on whatever cell she goes to. She has to look at that and all the kind things that he wrote about her on the wall. Every single day of her life, she has to look at that. Every day, if she's on the bottom bunk, she has to look at the top bunk with that picture on it. If she's on the top bunk, she has to look at the top if she's by herself. It should be all around her cell for the rest of her life. That, to me, would be the most the best way to bring justice, to show her what she did, who she killed, that this little boy loved her more than anything, more than that POS boyfriend she had, more than any boyfriend she would ever have, more than any woman will ever love her in prison, more than any person will ever probably love her in her entire life. Gabriel loved her so much, and that is what she should be reminded of every single day that she breathes on this earth. But that is just my opinion. So, in honor of Gabriel Fernandez, I'm sorry you had to live that life. You deserved so much better of a life. And I wish you all a safe and wonderful evening, morning, or